All right, so welcome to Refresh and Renew Restorative Yoga. Today is Sunday, May 9th. For those of you that are watching the recording, happy Mother's Day in all the ways that you're celebrating that, or whatever you're doing for this day or not doing. I am glad that you're taking the time to refresh and renew and restore yourself for the upcoming week. We are going to begin tonight doing a practice of what I've learned to be called backmitra. I don't know exactly what backmitra means, but I learned it from a physical therapist who also is a yoga teacher. And it was specifically designed for, as far as I understand, to help people with low back tightness and issues. But I have found that across the board, it helps people with mid-back issues, shoulder issues, neck issues. So basically anything going on in the spine, you may find that this is of great assistance to you. It's a simple practice. It takes a little bit of setting up and learning, but once you know it, you can do it. And most people that I teach this to, once they've got it, they like to do it very regularly, often daily. If they've been having different issues going on, that they find that it's that beneficial. So we will begin with backmitra, and then we will start moving in towards some other gentle stretches and then our longer holding postures. All right. So let me just remind you, for these longer holding postures, you don't have to stay in them for any length of time. You can move out of them whenever you want to or need to. And it's all about you being comfortable. So creating as much comfort as possible for yourself, shifting in and out of poses as you desire. All right. So for backmitra, all you need is a long blanket or towel. And I'm going to take a blanket and roll it long end to long end. So if you're familiar with making a breathing roll for our practice, those of you that have been practicing with me, you'll make a breathing roll and set it up on your mat. So once you have your breathing roll set up, the next thing to pay attention to is where we're going to lie. Let me just take my scarf off. Where we're going to lie on the breathing roll. So specifically, what you want to do is find the very end of your sternum. So go ahead, that's your breastbone, where the ribs cage meets together. So find your sternum, find the very base of the sternum. And then if you were to push your finger all the way through, which you're not going to do, you would find that same spot on the back side of your body. That space on the back side of your body is going to be resting at the very bottom edge of the blanket roll. So watch me for just a second. I'm going to set myself up so that the very bottom edge of the blanket roll is lined up just below the sternum. I'll have my knees bent, my arms to the side at 90-90, so cactus arms or goalpost arms. And then the first sequence is quite simple. We lift the elbows off the ground and hover for a moment. Then we stretch the elbows away from each other, bring the forearms toward each other, take our arms overhead, bring the forearms back up over the eyes, separate the forearms away from each other, hover above the ground, then stretch the elbows away from each other and relax. All right, I will talk you through it. I'm going to come up to the screen, so if you are watching in the recording, or if you need to peek over and see where we're at with this, you can take a look. So again, you're going to bend your knees. And I invite you to take your arms out to the side in goalpost arms, 90-90, so that you're getting a little bit of stretch across the front of your chest. And then the first thing you're going to do is lift your elbows up and off the floor and just hover there for a moment. And then stretch your elbows apart from each other. So Kevin, take your arms into this position. Yeah, does that feel okay? All right. Then stretch the elbows away from each other. Now bring the forearms toward each other. They may or may not touch. That's okay. Hands are going to touch. Now take your arms overhead. So fingertips overhead to your blanket. Just like that. And then forearms over the eyes. And then separate your elbows away from each other, but don't touch the floor yet. You're going to kind of hover here. And then stretch your elbows away from each other and relax your arms down. Be completely at ease. So that's number 1. All right, for the second one, we've got our arms again in 90-90. Let your fingertips relax. Lift your elbows up and off the floor and hover. Stretch the elbows away from each other. Bring your forearms toward one another, hands touching. Arms are going to go overhead toward the floor, fingertips touching the blankets. Then bring your arms over your eyes. Separate your forearms away from each other, hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other and relax your arms down. Soften everything. That's 2. Moving into the third one, we're going to lift our elbows up and off the floor, hover. Stretch them away from each other. Bring the hands together, forearms over the eyes. Take your hands toward the blanket overhead. Bring your forearms over your eyes again. Separate your forearms away from each other, hover. Stretch your elbows away from one another and relax down. If I'm correct, that was our 4th one, yes? Great, okay. This will be the 5th one and our final one for this set. Lift your elbows up and off the floor, hover. Stretch the elbows away from each other. Bring the hands together. Take the hands overhead toward the blanket. Bring the forearms over your eyes again. Separate your elbows away from each other, hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other and relax. That's the 5th one. And just breathe here. You can straighten your legs if you need to or want to for a moment and just relax and soften. Okay, now for the second set of these, it changes up just a little bit. It starts the same. We lift the elbows off the floor, we stretch them away from each other, we bring the hands together, and then it changes slightly. We actually lock the thumbs and straighten the forearms, or excuse me, straighten the elbows. So watch me for a second. So I've gone through the very first part. I bring the hands together, and then I'm going to lock the thumbs, straighten the elbows, take the arms overhead, lift the pelvis. And then as I lower the pelvis down, I bring the arms back up overhead. Hands together, elbows bend, back out to the sides, hover, stretch, relax, and soften. Okay, so the big change is lock the thumbs, straighten the elbows, arms overhead, lift the pelvis. And then back through the whole version. So I will talk you through that. All right. So lying on our backs, we're going to bend our knees. Take your elbows and arms to 90-90. All right, lift your elbows up and off the floor, hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other. Bring your hands together. Lock your thumbs, straighten your elbows. Take your arms overhead, lift your hips up toward the sky. When you're ready to lower your pelvis, take your arms back up, fingertips reaching toward the ceiling. Bending your elbows, bring your forearms over your eyes. Then arms out to the side, hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other and relax. That's 1. All right, lift your elbows up and off the floor, hover. Stretch them apart from each other. Bring the palms of the hands together. Lock your thumbs, straighten your elbows. Lift your arms overhead, lift your pelvis up toward the sky. When you're ready to lower your pelvis down, your fingertips go back up toward the sky. Forearms, palms together, and then separate the forearms away from each other, hover. Stretch the elbows away from one another and relax completely. It's 2. All right, let's lift our forearms up and off the floor. Hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other. Palms of the hands together, lock the thumbs, straighten the elbows. Take the arms overhead as you lift your pelvis up. As you lower your pelvis down, the arms come back up, fingertips pointing toward the sky. Bring the palms of the hands together, forearms over the eyes. Separate the forearms, hover. Stretch your elbows away from each other and relax, soften, soften. All right, let's lift our forearms up and off the floor, hover. Stretch them away from each other. Bring the palms of the hands together. Lock the thumbs, straighten the elbows. Take the arms overhead toward the floor as you lift your pelvis. As you are ready to lower your pelvis, bring the arms back up overhead. Nancy, open the palms of your hands so they're facing toward like that, yes. And then bring the palms together, forearms over the eyes. Bend your elbows, yep. Then open the forearms away from each other, hover. Stretch them away from one another and soften, relax. So that was our 4th one. We're gonna go into our last one now. So lifting the forearms up and off the floor, hover. Elbows off the ground. Reach them away from each other, elbows stretching away. Bring the hands together. Lock the thumbs, straighten the elbows. Lift the arms overhead as you lift your pelvis as well. And then as you lower your pelvis down, your arms come straight up toward the sky again. Bend your elbows, palms of the hands together. Separate the forearms away from each other, hover. Then stretch the elbows away from one another and relax. You can take your legs out long again and just soften completely.